before we start? Thank you. Hi, everyone. Before we just start, I would like to know if how did you all hear about this event? And if you're a student of IT Madras or are you an alumni, you can type your answers in the chat box, please. Thank you. Great, thank you. Hello, Sri Lakshmi. Which batch are you in? You can also type that. Oh, nice. 2006. Hello, Yelumala Karunakaran. Very nice. Good to see a lot of alumni. Any students of IT Madras in the room? Please let me know in the chat. We'll begin in a few minutes. Let's just wait for 3:05. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Okay. Shall we begin? Avik, Papia, are you ready?
Sure, please.
Done. Okay. Hello, everybody. And I'm Nishani Manohar, the Executive Director of IIT Madras Alumni Association. And thank you all for joining us on this Saturday afternoon. We went back and forth with the dates a lot with Mr. Avik Chanda before we could finalize on something quickly. And, I hope this was not interrupting any schedule of yours, but thank you so much especially I see a lot of alumni. Thank you so much for being here. Today's program is a little different from our usual programs of thought leadership, societal impact, and community spirit. Today, we wanted to address a lot of issues with placements and jobs that a lot of our alumni and students were facing. And we put together something very special. I met Avik Chanda over email and was introduced by him by our President Krishnan Narayanan. And I'm looking forward to this session. I hope there are a lot of takeaways for everybody from this session and for myself as well. So, Avik, thank you so much for joining us. And
pleasure.
I'm going to give it to Papia to do a formal introduction of yourself. Over to you, Papia.
Thank you, Nishani. So, hi, I think everybody is ready. So, yes. So, okay. So, hi, I'm Papia. I'm a team member of IIT Madras Alumni Association. So, on behalf of team, I'm very happy to introduce our today's speaker, Mr. Avik. I'm just going to give a very brief introduction about him. He's the founder and CEO of NUVAH, which offers innovative behavioral insight into individuals and teams. He is a well-known thought leader, entrepreneur, and best-selling author. Avik is visiting faculty at many prestigious institutions such as IIM Kozhikode, the Indian School of Public Policy, and IIT Guwahati. He is also a sought-after speaker at various prestigious forums, including the University of Chicago, JNU, Ashoka University, and many more. Avik has been published in numerous renowned publications. His first book, From Command to Empathy, was featured in Amazon Best Reads. It's a great pleasure today to have Mr. Avik with us. It's over to you, Mr. Avik, please.
Thank you so much, Nishani and Papia, for that warm introduction. And let me just start by thanking the IIT Madras Alumni Association for organizing this particular event, this special event. And my thanks to all of you for taking time off your busy schedule on a Saturday afternoon and dedicating that, determining to spend that together in this discussion. And I can see the number of participants going up, which is always a very heartening sign. So what I'll do is a couple of just ground rules, if you will. This is something I was discussing earlier with Nishani and Papia. We are going to have this entire session end to end for about 90 minutes, 1.5 hours. And for the first hour or so for the first 60 to 70 minutes, it'll be more on a lecture mode. So you will be on mute. However, I would request you, because at certain points I would like to make it interactive, and I'll be asking some questions on the slides, basis the content that we see, and please use your chat boxes. And obviously, I will try to the best of my ability to keep at least the last 15 minutes, if not more, where we can come back and have a more free-feeling discussion and have questions from you, unmuted. Okay, great. So without further ado, let me just quickly get started with the presentation. I hope, and you can start using the chat box. So I hope everybody's able to hear me clearly and they can see the slides as well, right? Okay, great. So let me just get started. I think the fundamental question, of course, future of work is topical, it's important, it's hot, all of that and more. But the fundamental question that you might have had in your mind when you've registered is, okay, two things. A, why should I mean, there are so many people across the world, including institutional think tanks and analysts and organizations that have been talking about various aspects of the future of work, right? Why do I attend this session and invest 90 minutes of my time to listen to Avik? What am I going to get from it? Why Avik? That's the first question. And two, from this particular session, in the next 70, 80 minutes of the lecture, what is it that I can actually hope to get, right? So let me start by answering those questions up front, and then we'll get into the discussion. Okay. All right. So the reason why I'm before you folks is very simple. There is, as an author, you heard that in the introduction, I've had an earlier business book that was published at the end of 2017, early 2018 by HarperCollins, which talked about the importance of EQ in the business place, in the Indian workplace. And this particular book that's been published by Penguin Random House and that I've co-written with a friend of mine who's an economist based in the UK, Siddharth Gangapathy. This has been brought out by Penguin Business in 4 weeks' time, in exactly 4 weeks' time. And what we have done here in this book that we have called Work 3.0 is to answer is huge sort of umbrella mother of all questions. What will the worker, the workplace, and the nature of work itself look like in the future? Okay, that's the task that we've given ourselves. And in order to do that, what we have done is that we have done our own individual research. Me coming from a business or a corporate world, brought my perspective, Sid his perspective. We've had a whole bunch of academics and researchers helping us. What we've also done is we have interviewed a number of domain experts, both nationally as well as internationally, to get their perspective as well. So what I'm going to give you is just a little essence. It's just a little flavor. I mean, you can imagine if this is a 500 or a 550 page book, there's only so much that we can cover in 60 or 70 minutes, correct? But I really want to give you the important flavors of the insights, some of the findings, and some of the key applications that we have seen when we were writing this particular book. That's the whole intent, okay? All right. What are the specific topics that we are talking about? Because when you look at work, worker, and workplace, that's an ocean. The future of work is an ocean, right? And what we are not going to do, what I'm not going to try and do is cover 50 different elements of it, which are there in the book. What I want to do is, if you look at the three big agents or stakeholders in any ecosystem, not just in India, but also abroad, which are they? Number one, you can talk about the government agencies and anything to do with government or public sector or any extension or variation thereof. That's number one. Number two is you have the industries, the industry bodies, the firm, the organization. That's number two. And number three, you have the individuals, the professionals, which are yourselves. I know some of you are students, but I saw when you were using the chat box that some of you are alumni who have passed out in 2020, 2021. Some of you have passed out in 2000, 2001, 1998, I saw, right? So there's a lot of good mix in this particular cohort, right? A group that's joining the session. Some people have just 1 or 2 years of work ex and some people have 20. Yeah, plus. So what we want to focus on really is to talk more about what it means for you as an individual with a little bit of color commentary around the broad trends. Okay, now with that, let's get going. First, we'll have a couple of slides which talk a little bit across the broad sweep, a broad brush of trends across the ecosystem. And then we'll home in specifically on things that are individual or professional specific. All right. Okay. So work, worker, and workplace trends. Some of these are not going to be rocket science for you. Some of these are going to be things that you already know or are aware of. What we are going to do here is synthesize them and try and connect some important dots for you guys. So the end of the 5-day working week. And what I'm not going to do is to advocate any of these and to say, yes, this is good and yes, that is bad. I'm going to just call out these major elements as we have found them and also call out some basic, absolutely basic pros and cons for these. That's the way that we're going to do these 2 slides. The end of the 5-day working week. Now, as many of you know or remember, that a change has occurred in the labor code in India. Now, that means it's not a mandate, but employers are now permitted, it is permissible by law to have 4 working days instead of 5. And again, the mandate by law, as many of you know, most of you know, is for 48 hours of a work week. Now, that means earlier that 48 hours would have been spread out over 5 days or even more for certain companies for 6 days. Now, it is permitted by law under Indian law for an employer to have a 4-day working week, keeping in mind the legal mandate, okay, which is 48 hours. Now, that obviously comes up to 12 hours, which has its pros because you're getting more free time and more me time, but it also has its cons. If you're doing really 10 hours of work or 9 hours of work, then there's a particular productivity that you can expect in those 9 hours or 10 hours. The moment that goes up to 12 hours or more, you may expect a dip in that productivity. And this is something that comes from organizational behavior, it comes from applied psychology, etc. Now, the next one is remote and gig worker. They're here to stay. Absolutely no brainer. We have seen, and many of you have passed out around the pandemic and before that. Now, what you've seen during the pandemic is that even if you were not part of IT or technology or professional services, which had a mode or which had some approach of remote working or online working even before the pandemic, even if you came from a more traditional sector, a lot of the work, as much as was physically possible, operationally possible, was happening online. Even right now, there are multiple companies that you know of, and maybe you work in some of them, where it's not a full-fledged, 5-day or 6-day work. Maybe some of the work, you still have some flexibility of doing this. And that is a norm that is going to stay. And in fact, because of economic expediency, a lot of the employers have found it convenient to have even large departments, which are not directly client-facing, to be working offline. Online, right? And working remotely, not on premises, not in the office. Again, there are pros and cons. Third one, goodbye middle manager. We've given this dramatic tag. Now, this alludes to a very important Gartner report that was commissioned and that was published before the pandemic. So pandemic begins early 2020. This was published in 2019. But even though this could not have taken into account all the disruptions of the pandemic, right? And all the various impacts, unexpected impacts of the pandemic, it did predict something. Even back in 2019, before the pandemic, Gartner predicted that if you take a 10-year time frame and you're looking at a 2028 or 2029, and we're not very far from that today, right? What you can definitely expect is the traditional role of the middle manager, someone who just walks the floors and looks over the shoulders of people and say, okay, what's happening? What's not? What problem are you facing? What time is your deliverable? What time is your call? Yeah. Why have you been so late from lunch? The typical things that we can imagine. This particular role of a typical traditional middle manager is going to go away at a very fast pace. It may not be zero. Some sectors will still retain it. Other sectors will ramp down very, very fast. The fourth point here, the great shift. What is this? Where is this coming from? What's the illusion? The illusion is a very famous, but also somewhat alarming, controversial report that was published by McKinsey recently. And what they said is because the nature of jobs, what we mean by worker, the fact that gig economy is opening up and more gigs are coming up and freelancing is coming up and there's economic uncertainty, and within a space of 9 to 12 months, which we have never seen in our economic history, you find that within 9 to 12 months, in certain sectors, many sectors, there is a talent crunch, there is a resource crunch, and people are asking for 40%, 50%, 100% increment and getting it. And within 9 months of that, you have a scenario which is right now we are seeing in IT, in tech, in professional services, in various other sectors, where there is actually being a layoff. There's a retrenchment. And that is again a global trend. India is following a global trend started by the US, and of course also the UK, which is in recession, right? So all of this means from an individual perspective, what? That we have to be nimble enough. We have to be supple enough in our competency basket, in the skills and competencies, the attributes that we have, so that we can make a shift very easily at any point of time. Okay, a shift from sector X to sector Y, a shift from domain A to domain B, a shift from job role 1 to job role 2. All right, okay. Just a continuation of that. Just these are, again, remember, just the broad trends, and then we'll get to more person-specific, individual-specific stuff. Rise of social entrepreneurship and corporate social responsibility. Now, we know that there is a corporate social responsibility from a legal standpoint. There's a mandate that any company which has made an operating margin, not a loss, a certain percentage of that margin has to be expended in terms of corporate social responsibility. Now, the whole synergy can be reaped. So you can expend something. And what I have seen in large companies, which are well-intentioned, which are well-meaning, by the way, but they will work on infrastructure or roads or painting walls or painting roads, right? Or paying for the tar to be applied across potholes on year 1. On year 2, they'll work with an orphanage. On year 3, they'll work with a home or a children's school for underprivileged children. In year 5, they might work with something else. Yeah. What happens when you do that is that there is no cohesion, there is no synergy across time and across the various players. So there is a great opportunity for NGOs and for corporates and for government to come together. Okay, and reap big synergies, economies of scale. Second, DEI. This is something that has been there, but the pandemic has brought it to focus. Discrimination, the prevention of sexual harassment, the POSH, bullying, and all kinds of nefarious practices, which may have to do with caste, creed, community, gender, and post 377, Article 377 going off, and even discrimination with respect to people of different sexual orientation. So you're talking specifically about the LGBT community. This is coming up big. The new CXOs, we all know about, the chief people officer, the chief talent officer, the chief transformation officer, the chief information officer, etc. But what we are seeing now is that there are more and more new, and these are not just gimmicks, guys. So new CXO designations and their teams coming up. There are quite a few of them that the book discusses. I'm going to give you just 2. One, earlier you would have seen there are instances where a chief transformation officer is also a CIO. Or typically you will see a CIO is also the chief data person. Now you have a chief data officer or a chief information security officer. That is one thing that is coming up in a big way. Why? As more and more business goes online, think about it, guys. What's happening is the risk of cyber threats and hacking goes up exponentially. So again, to mitigate that, you need people with that specific specialism and teams who are specialized in that. That's a big thing. On the other end, so this is something very, very concrete, very niche, very technical, sophisticated. On a different level of sophistication, guys, is where you have the human-centric things. So for example, a chief philosophy officer is somebody who's basically going to go and talk to the stakeholders and say, look, we've had the pandemic. A lot of things have changed on the ground. The way that we are doing our business has changed. Our employee policies have changed. The procedures has changed. Should we not revisit the basic things which are the backbone of the company? What is that? The vision of the company, the mission statement of the company, the value system of the company, and the objectives of the company. Should we revisit that? And how should we revisit it? How can we reimagine them? This is typically something that the chief philosophy officer will do. The last one on this particular slide, and I'm just taking a quick look at not just the time, but also the number of participants. And it's very hard when we began around 3:05, from that point, I think we have more than 30–40% of participants, and it's steadily rising, which is great. Okay, leadership in action track. What does this mean, and where does this come from? Simple. PwC, or PricewaterhouseCoopers, which, as you know, is a management consulting firm or an accounting firm, which is part of the Big Four. This organization has brought out a massive major report last year, where they're looking at a study of CXOs across the globe, but also specific India. And what the Indian CXOs have said in their response to the survey is that they're aware of the challenges in the future of work. They're aware of the opportunities that are there in the future of work. But this is the good news. This is the good part. But they are not doing much about it for very many reasons. Okay? I'm just focusing on today, not tomorrow. I'm just focusing on cost cutting and not something that can get me additional profits or can increase my goodwill or my brand or my estimate in the world 3 years down the line. I'm looking at playing catch up. Pandemic has affected me very badly. I need to catch up for the lost time of 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years. I don't have the time for this right now. Or I'm facing budget constraint. I'm facing cost constraint, resource constraint, all of that. Very many reasons, but one underlying outcome. CXOs know a lot about the future of work, but they're not doing nearly enough. Okay, I'm just going to pause for that to sink in for you for like 15 seconds, maybe, guys. And now what we'll do is we'll go over to the portion which has a lot more things around the individual specific. So all of these, as you've seen, are more to do with the firms, with leadership, with the economy, etc. Now let's talk about individuals. You and people in your teams, those of whom have a managerial responsibility. Now, we have done our research across major think tanks. So World Economic Forum, ILO, ADB, World Bank, and a whole host of others, like the think tanks, the Big Four, the Gartner Forrester McKinsey, etc. Now, this is just a very, very crisp, sharp summary. There's a lot more details there in publications that we've made and also in the book. Very quick summary. What I want you to do, and for now, let us start with the limitation that you're on mute, but let us start to use the chat box. I'll request you. Let's start to make this a bit more interactive. Okay. On this slide, take a look at the left-hand box where you have emerging job roles. And this is true. This is largely true. There's a very close consistency between job roles emerging and declining globally and in India. So assume this to be applicable for globally as well as India. All right. Look at the left-hand side box. Cast your eyes, give a glance, give a scan on these 10. The emerging job roles, the sunrise job roles. And then please use the chat box and tell me what is it that stands out. You find a pattern. Go for it, guys. Let's make this a little interactive. Please use the chat box. I know we just need 1 or 2 takers to get us going. Yeah. Digitization or digitalization or technologization. A lot of this has to do with data. A lot of this has to do with IT. They're technology intensive. Anything else? Anything else? Anything else? Math skills, it's good, okay. STEM, process automation, AI. Yeah. I haven't come to the right-hand side. You're absolutely right, Vivek. But let's focus just on the left-hand side, and then we go to the right-hand side, please. Anything else on the left-hand side? I'm waiting for something very, very sharp and specific. In its importance? Yes, exactly. Apurva's nailed it. Specialization. Look at these 10. Just read them out, and you will see 5 or 6 of them use the word specialist. So it is not just data, it's not just technology, it's not just digitalization. It is specialization that's coming up. That's going to be in demand in the future, right? Now look at the right-hand side. So Vivek's already put one. Anybody else want to add to that? Vivek's already made a comment, which is correct. Manual and clerical work is being phased out. Repetitive work and predictable work is going to be automated, so that's being phased out. Something Vivek said, Ravi has said, absolutely correct. Balkrishnan asks, human intervention going out? The answer is, it depends. But at least these kind of things, there's a lot of human intervention that is typically required or traditionally required. If you look at a scenario, those of you who've been in the workplace for, let's say, 8, 10 plus years. So that part is being phased out, right? So let's summarize this particular slide. What is it that we are saying? What's hot and what's not? What's hot, what's coming up, is specialization and digitalization, technology intensive, mathematical skills, sophisticated skills, right? Not easy jobs, not no-brainer jobs, jobs that require a lot of brains. And what is declining? Now map this when, remember we said, goodbye middle manager, right? This is alluding to that, is pointing to that possibility in a big way. Storekeepers, managers who walk the floor, managers who walk the assembly line, managers who walk across the mall. As more and more things get digitalized, the fewer you need these managers to just go around, see that everything is okay, talk to the customers, talk to the personnel. It could be a mall, it could be a shop, a hypermarket, it could be a restaurant, it could be a club, it could be a big office. Yeah, no big difference. Across this board, the traditional manager, admin, operation role is being phased out. It's being sunset. Yeah, that's the big takeaway. Now, let's look at this, the top emerging skills in India. And by the way, there's a big overlap, there's a big consonance between the top emerging skills in India and the top emerging skills across the world, globally. So assume both to be the same, just for the purpose of this discussion. Now, what I want you to do is look at these 15, give it 15, 20, 30 seconds, look at these 15, and then use the chat box and tell me what is the pattern that strikes you. Is there a pattern here? And if so, what does it involve? What does that pattern include? Data-driven, soft skill becoming increasingly important. What else, guys? Anybody else? Anybody want to add to this or further clarify or further sharpen what we've got? Problem solving, yeah. EQ. Yeah. Anything else, guys? Out of the box thinking, empathy. Okay, lovely. I think you guys are getting it. Yeah. So let me paraphrase it. You guys, whatever you said is all correct. Let me, zoom out even more and tell you what is really here in this picture. It means there are two kinds of specialism. Remember in the earlier chart we saw, there is specialism, specialist, 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 specialist. What we are seeing on this slide, this chart, is that there's not one, but two kinds of specialism. The first one is a no-brainer, because we already know that. The specialism, which is based on technology, on digitization, on AI, on automation, on programming, on very sophisticated domain and industry skills, right? So look at number 6, technology design and programming, right? Look at number 11, technology use, monitoring and control. Look at number 12, look at number 13, look at number 14. All of these, they are more IQ driven. Think about it. If you just have to roll it up into one tag, what is that tag? IQ. They're more IQ driven. So this is definitely one specialism that's coming up. On the other hand, you have the human-centric skills, EQ, empathy, cognitive skills, interpersonal skills, as Apurva was mentioning, and Ravi also, right? So you need both. You need the IQ, which is the technology-oriented or the analytical-oriented or the mathematical-oriented skills, with the behavioral skills, which earlier people used to call soft skills, right? Used to call soft skills. Your soft skills training. What is soft skills? It's actually not soft skills. It's very hard skills. It's very complicated. It's very difficult to learn. Yeah, because you have to change and form new habits. You have to change your mindset somehow. You have to change your way of working and your orientation of thinking sometimes. It's very difficult, actually. It's not a soft skill. I mean, because it just sounds very easy. Yeah, soft skill training. More than that. So two kinds of specialism that we are seeing, right? Great. Now, what we've actually done for our book is one of the things I said, okay, you know what? Let's take a look at what people are saying across the board. And let's see if we can find a pattern in a different way. So here also you're looking at patterns. In the previous slide also you found patterns. Now let me give you a visual representation of a pattern. This is just a snapshot, guys. Okay, so we have done this research for a large number of entities. So on the columns here, you may be seeing 7, 8 columns. We've done this for like 15, 20. Okay, but this is just to give you, as I said, the essence, the flavor of what we're doing here. How do you? It's a little cluttered. It looks like a little complicated thing, but that's deliberate. Okay, give this 10, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. Let this seep in. Let this seep in. Okay, let this seep in, and then I'll tell you how best to use this particular slide. And by the way, post our session today, I will be sharing this particular presentation with Papia and Nishani. So this will again be shared with you guys in turn. Okay. So don't worry about if I'm going a little fast, because there's a lot to cover, or if you've missed something. The recording is also there, so you can always come back and refer to it. And the slides will be there with you as well in soft copy. Okay. All right, guys. Let me tell you what's really happening here. The simple way of interpreting this slide or making use of this slide is to take a cluster of skills and go right across, left, right. Go right across. Example, take a cluster of advanced communication just right up at the top. And social intelligence, emotional intelligence, empathy, stuff that we talked about. You guys gave this, right? if you see this as a cluster of skills and you're going right across, you will see a majority of the think tanks have said yes, or have said something about the urgency or importance of developing these skills. So there is some kind of a consensus that is building around this. Why is this important? Because if you're looking at the future of work, and here again, I've just listed 35 skills and you just have 7 or 8 or 9 on the columns. Imagine you're doing this for 15 or 20 columns and you're looking at not 35 but 50. It will become not Herculean, it will become physically impossible for any individual professional to inculcate and develop and nurture all the skills in that matrix, in that spreadsheet. Impossible. Impossible. So in that scenario, instead of getting overwhelmed, what we are suggesting in our book, and this is the approach I'm telling you, is look at the clusters, look at the bands, and you will see 3 or 4 patterns of clusters emerging. Then write down those 4 clusters or those 4 patterns. Map them to what you're doing in your job and where you want to be in the next 3 years, say, right? Year 1, year 2, year 3, if you take this as ground zero. And then from those clusters, ask yourself, which are the ones that I should be developing on a priority basis this year itself, or from April itself. That's the way that we can take this forward. That's one way of looking at it. Okay, cool. So now we're going to switch gears. What have we been talking about? We've been talking about the domains. We've been talking about the skills. We've been talking about the dual specialism. One is the IQ, or the technical analytical specialism. Second is the EQ, or the cognitive or human-centric or interpersonal specialism, correct? We have looked at these clusters, which can give us a very insightful heat map. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the shift. Remember, we said the great shift, the McKinsey report, a few slides back. We're going to talk about the great shift across 3 or 4 slides. There's a lot of discussion and detail in the original report that we have referenced, and we have embellished that using our own insight and the interviews and the insight that we've got from domain experts across the world. So there's a lot more around that in the book, but I just want to use maybe 3-4 slides and give you a flavor of what the great shift means and how big an endemic it really is, and why there's a big chance that it can impact you. All right? Okay. Got it. Okay. Just a very quick touch point, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, because we're coming up to, in terms of slides, about 50% of what I have to cover, and we can do the rest. We have a lot of time. So are we going too slow for you, too fast? Is the space okay? Are you able to follow? Just use the chat box and tell me, please. Make it easier for me for the remainder of the session. Yeah. Anybody else? Just about the pace and how we're doing. Okay. Don't raise your hand. We'll do that right at the end. Use the chat box. When we unmute you right at the end, that's when you can raise your hand and talk. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. So you guys are okay. Cool. Thanks. Fine. Comfortable. All right. So let's proceed. Okay. Now, job pivots by job family of source occupation. Okay, one quick clarification. This job family, this term is typical World Economic Forum terminology. I just want to clarify. It does not mean jobs that stay in the family. My father is a doctor, so I also became a medical practitioner. My father has a chamber, I'm using that same chamber. My father was a lawyer, so I'm also a lawyer, I have the same chamber. My father was a CA or a cost accountant, I'm using the same chamber, right? Or the same shop, Gaddi pe baitha hu. We're not talking about that. We're talking about job family. What does job family mean? Job family here means something very specific. What is the kind of job, a type of job? For example, a job could be to do with people and culture. Very broadly, HR, admin, management, people management. right? Or a job could be to do with heavy engineering, manufacturing firms, which have a very, very sophisticated line of multiple products, where you are using your core engineering skills that you've been educated on. Or it could be something like marketing, sales. So these are the clusters, okay, or categories. That is called the job family. Now, look at this, the change in the job family. Take one or two examples. So if you're looking at product development or data and AI at the top of the chart, there's almost a 70%, not almost, sorry, 72%, more than 70% change in that job family. Whereas if you're in people and culture, take the last two, and engineering, which are traditional jobs, very traditional jobs, there the change is a lot less. What do you think about this? Do you have an explanation? Do you have a thesis on this? Use the chat box and let me know. Okay, guys, there is a little bit of a technical glitch at my end. Sometimes when I go on to the full slide view, right, it's difficult for me to check the chat messages as well, which is why I'm right now not on slide view, but we can, we can extend it, we can talk. So use the chat box. What stands out on this particular slide? Or the specific ones that we talked about, right? Product development, AI on the one, data and AI on the one hand, and on the other hand, people and culture and engineering. Any explanation, any hypothesis for what we are seeing on this slide? Give it a shot, give it a shot. Anybody? Okay, while you're processing this, let me give you a couple of hints, right? Why is the change in the job family? Take a typical HR role. An HR person can be an HR generalist. Yeah. It can be a recruiter. It can be somebody who's part of the L&D team, so learning and development. It can be part of somebody who is doing more in terms of payroll and processing and progression and promotions and transfer, etc., right? So even with the advent of technology, the basic role of HR has not changed. Why? You still need to recruit people. Now you may recruit gig workers instead of full-time employees, but you still need to hire. You still need to recognize, you still need to reward, you still need to promote, and wherever it is essential, you still need to take corrective action or disciplinary action. These basic things in HR has not changed and will not change in the near future. So that's why the change in the job family, when you see people and culture, is less. Think about it. Whereas, imagine you're doing product development, you're a programmer. It has changed completely, right? You were doing analog, then you were doing digital. And then it goes all mobile, it goes all online, it goes all cloud-based. I'm just using the buzzwords that we have seen in the last 15 years. Just the buzzwords will give you an idea of how big the job changes have been. Cloud-based, globalized, online, secure, IoT. And now you're talking about AI. You're talking about machine learning. You're talking about the metaverse. You're talking about multiverse. It's a combination of multiple metaverses talking to each other. Right, guys? It's a sea change. Compare the job changes for a programmer in the last 15 years vis-a-vis an HR person. No comparison. That is what is reflected here on this particular slide. Okay, all right, let's move on. There are a few similar slides like this, 2 or 3 more, and then we can keep going. Okay, we don't need to necessarily spend the same amount of time on each of these, but just give you the broad hints, and the rest you can pick up when you introspect, you go through the slides, or you go through the book. Those of you who want to. Here, it's very, very fundamental. It's very clear. Look at this. Transitions by occupation and job cluster. Which kind of jobs are remaining in the same job cluster? Which are going to another emerging job cluster? Which are going to any job cluster? Doesn't matter. Emerging, sunsetting, whatever. Basically, there's an exodus of traditional things that they're just going out. Okay. Take one example. I'll give you one example, and then you'll be able to work your way backwards and upwards across all the others. Just one example. Sales. Maximum exodus that's happening, right? Because same occupation is 20% or less than 20%, as you can see, the bottom bar, right? Right at the lower end. How do we explain this? Think about it. Because there is so much disturbance, there is so much noise, there's so much disruption, there's so much unpredictability and uncertainty in the system that you have to be very, very flexible and nimble. And you have to keep shifting jobs if you're in sales. Take an example. You were in manufacturing and you were doing manufacturing sales. Okay. Let's say 5 years back, 10 years back. Just giving an example. Then you're saying, okay, you know what? I need to shift. Why? Because manufacturing, the prospects are not that great. The growth is not that great. There is some stagnation. Plus, we are importing a lot of stuff from other countries, from other economies. So domestic manufacturing is not that great. And you say, okay, I'm a sales guy. What do I do? Okay, I'll go to IT. I'll go to IT. And IT was one of these, or the professional services were one of these, which sustained us even during the pandemic and beyond. So say, okay, I'm going to be a sales guy for IT. Now what do I see? Now we see IT, there's layoff. Technology, there's layoff. Professional services, there's layoff. Information technology, product development, high tech, there's layoff. Globally and in India. Now you're saying, okay, I'm a sales guy. I have all of these core skills. And the good news is I have quite a bit of experience. So I understand manufacturing and how I've been able to do that. I've been reasonably successful. I was very successful for a short period in IT, but now I'm afraid of losing my job. You say, what am I going to do? I can't go into real estate. That's not good. Healthcare, maybe. I could change entirely and join some startup as a sales director or as a salesperson. That's one possibility because of the startup ecosystem. The other possibility is, okay, let me look at renewable energy. Let me look at EV. Let me look at renewable oil, oil substitutes or fossil fuel substitutes. There are these companies that are there. There are these companies coming up. And there's also international collaboration in this particular domain that's coming up. We know. Can I pivot? Can I shift from this? Clear, guys? I was doing manufacturing, sales for manufacturing. Then I was doing sales for IT. I'm going to do sales for renewable energy. That's why it's that huge shift. Okay. I'm just going to keep going in the interest of time. Job pivot skills with source occupation. This is somewhat similar to the other one. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Relative importance of skills. This is nothing but a combination. Remember, we said the emerging skills and the declining skills. And the next one, we said emerging skills, where we talked about the dual specialism. This is just a different view of that. Okay, we're slicing and dicing a different view of that same thing. Okay, all right. So not spending time on this as such. Let's talk a little bit about, okay, so now we're going to again shift gears. So we're going to talk about self-awareness or mindfulness in a big way. We're going to talk about resilience and workplace resilience. Why? Because during the pandemic, and even now, a lot of people, a lot of think tanks and gurus and institutional analysts have been talking about the importance of resilience in the workplace. Well, what is it? How do we inculcate it? Talk a little bit about that. And then last but not least, also talk about the EQ part, because many of you guys said, right, EQ is important, empathy is important, interpersonal skills is important, right, in the chat box. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll kind of end with some key insights that have been done by the work of the positive psychologists, right? So that's the next like 15, 20 minutes. And then we can have a more freewheeling discussion. All right. So there's a huge amount of literature around mindfulness and how we can use that at work and a whole lot of things, guys, right? Several books, several shelves of a library can be filled up just on mindfulness. What I want to say here is that there are two essential, if you're talking about the West and the research and applications in the West over the last 4 or 5 decades, there are two essential schools of thought. One is a meditation-based school of thought, which is also called MBSR, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction, which has been developed by John Kabat-Zinn and his associates at MIT. There is another school of thought, parallel school of thought, non-meditative school of thought, but also talking about mindfulness. And this is the school of Ellen Langer and her associates at Harvard. Okay, I'm just going to give you a very quick flavor of this. The novelty-seeking, novelty-producing engagement and flexibility. So Ellen Langer, Professor Langer, has a scale, a psychometric scale, a behavioral test, which evaluates individuals and teams on these 4 factors. So in her formulation, in her research, what she has seen for more than 4 decades, is it is possible to measure the mindfulness of a person and therefore measure the progress or change across time. 2, mindfulness is not a monolith. There are 4 different sub-factors that it's possible to measure and gives quantitative scores on. Okay, right? And as alumni of IIT and students of IIT, all of us are we like numbers, right? We like data. So this is one of those. Okay, you can just go through this at your leisure in more detail. And if there are any questions, those can be routed through Papi or the team here. Yeah, I'm just going to move forward. This is a snapshot, just a snapshot, a sampler of some companies across the world that are using mindfulness in a big way. It's not just these 8 or 10 companies, by the way, guys. It's hundreds of companies and not just limited to the West. The reason why I gave these is that they're household names that you easily understand. You recognize these names and what they stand for, right? And you can see it's across sectors. So you see financial services, you see high tech, you see product development, you see IT, yeah. And they have multiple different factors and multiple different ways and multiple different initiatives in which they're using this. A lot of it involves a lot of investment, consultants and meditation experts, yoga experts, etc., etc. A lot of these involve sophisticated tools and skills where you have something like a headset and you're able to actually measure the brain activity and figure out how much composure you have, how much stress you have, how much poise you have, how much anxiety you have, etc., etc. Right? We're not going into the details of all of that. There's a fair bit of detail that is discussed in public fora and also in our book. What I want to give you a quick, very quick flavor of is we can take a tea break. Now, while mindfulness initiatives can be very expensive, very time consuming, and have a lot of additional and expert inputs, and you get psychologists and psychiatrists and meditators on board and have millions of dollars, tens of crores being, you can also do things which are very simple, which are cost effective, and which are still impactful. Okay. This is what Google uses, by the way, one of the many things that they use. The tea break, TEA, thoughts, energies, intention. Now, this comes from Buddhist meditative practice. And in those of you who know a little bit about it or have an inkling about meditation, you know that they have the Buddhist bowls, the prayer bowls, chimes, right? And they also have the bells, they also have the gongs. So some effect of sound, in other words. Here, what they do is you can have a setup, a scheduler on your PDA or on your notebook or on your laptop, so that every 3 hours or 4 hours, like multiple times in a day, if you're working 11, 12 hours a day, have it at least 4 times, something like that. Yeah. And use the same frequency every day. So there's a bell chime that will go out, just like that Buddhist bell chime, like that, just like you see that, yeah, in the monastery or that you see documentaries or movies. The moment you hear that, unless you're in the middle of something really, really critical and urgent, or in the middle of a presentation or a talk like this, you say, okay, this is not absolutely life and death. I'm going to take a step back. Close your eyes. What are your thoughts going on at this point? Observe, do not judge. Do not pass a sentence. Do not be harsh on yourself. Just observe, make a mental note. What is your energy level right now? Good, bad, dipping on energy? Observe, don't judge. Third, what is your level of attention right now? Observe, don't judge. Yeah, just a simple tool that we can all use, free, cost effective. Cool. Now we talk about resilience in the workplace. Right? There's a fair bit of text on these 2 slides, and I'm not going to go through that in a lot of detail, because A, this would be given to you, and B, when you see this, this is going to be quite self-explanatory. So resilience in the workplace, earlier, if you see the definition or if you see the way that things were evolved or things were construed, was to say, what is resilience? You have a setback, you have a crisis, you have a delay, you have a failure, you have a hurdle, you have something negative happening, adverse happening in your life, in work. And then how can I guide through that time? How can I grit my teeth through that time with tenacity and then bounce back? This has been the traditional understanding of resilience for many decades. Now it is changing. Now, what psychologists are seeing and finding out is that resilience is not just dependent on when you have a problem. Okay? Resilience, or aspects of resilience, like living authentically, interacting cooperatively, building networks, staying healthy, this is not focused on a negative time. Okay, there's the flu virus that's in the air. There's maybe a resurgence of COVID, a new strain in the air. I have to just focus on health. You focus on health 24/7. So in other words, the realization comes to us that some element or the other, if there are 8, 9 elements of resilience, is important to us at all times, something or the other. So in other words, resilience is not conditional upon a problem. Resilience is a life skill. That's a big takeaway, guys. Here is just a simple exercise or a test. I'm just going to gloss over this because you can do this on your own. And in fact, we have multiple scales. So we have more complicated and sophisticated behavioral tests, psychometric tests, which are there on our platform, which we can offer. That's a different conversation altogether. I'm not getting into that. But this test you can do when you get your hand out. All right. Now, EQ, emotional intelligence. Again, giving you a flavor, there are whole library shelves or a mini library that can be filled up on the research and insights and findings of emotional intelligence work in the past 4.5, 5 decades. And Daniel Goleman at Harvard is commonly known, popularly known as the father of EQ or EI, emotional intelligence. And in his formulation, his model, you have 5 main elements. One is self-awareness. Am I aware of what's happening? Am I aware of my own emotions? Second is self-regulation. How good am I managing them? I may be aware that I'm getting tired. I may be aware that I'm getting stressed. I may be aware that I may be running out of time. How am I managing that particular feeling or emotion? Self-regulation. Third, motivation, intrinsic motivation through drive, right? Self-perpetuating, self-propagating. I'm not relying on somebody to say good or bad or great. Oh, this is great. I'm doing it from my own internal need, drive, conviction, desire, ambition, motivation. Social skills, right? So think about it. A lot of around the self-regulation and self-awareness are the cognitive skills. I think one of you made this comment earlier. I think it was Ravi. Interpersonal skills and cognitive skills. Not sure if it was Ravi. One of you. So this, look at it, social skills and empathy. This is exactly that. Yeah, what you said earlier. So this is emotional intelligence. Reams and reams, heaps and heaps that are there. There's quite a bit of discussion on the different kinds or different attributes of emotional intelligence, how we can use emotional intelligence in the workplace, how that can make a difference in our lives and in the lives of others in a positive way. There's a fair bit of summarization of this research in our book. So those of you interested. Okay. Now we are coming to, I know we're going to end at 4:30. So we have about 24, 25 minutes left. The good news is we are now coming to the last part of the session. And this has to do with the work of the positive psychologists. And, the positive psychology is a new way of looking at things, is a new work, is a new approach of viewing psychology. And I'm going to do a little bit of batting for the positive psychologists. And I think I can do that because I'm not a professionally trained psychologist, so I'm not selling my own service here. But there is a distinct reason why I want to talk about positive psychology. Let me explain. If you're looking at traditional psychology or psychiatry, it is nothing but an extension of traditional medical practice, what the doctors and the surgeons and the diagnosticians and the clinicians do. What is that? If I walk into a doctor's office anywhere in the world, there's only one question that the doctor is going to be asking. Anywhere in the world, Avik, what's your problem? What is wrong? What's your discomfort? What's your pain? Why have you come to me? Right? They're not going to ask, oh, Avik, great news. I heard that you're doing this session with the folks at, that's been organized by the IIT Madras Alumni Association. Oh, great. Oh, great, Avik, you are going to come out with this book. They're not going to ask me that. They're not asking me what is right, what is positive, what is good in my life. They'll ask me only one question. What's your problem? Why have you come to me? Then the whole point is what? Get the problem, diagnose the problem, give the medication or the treatment or the surgery, make him better. Simple, linear, A, B, C, D. Now, and psychology, traditional psychology, if you go back 100 years to Breuer and Freud, right? And later to Jung, so many other people. Traditional psychology and psychiatry is all about this. What's your problem? How can I fix it? Are you being stressed out? Are you being burnt out? Are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling dejected? Yeah? Are you feeling lonely? Let me help you. Positive psychology is saying something different, something fundamentally different. Positive psychology is saying, okay, guys, take a step back. Is there a burning platform? Is there a burning problem? Can we diagnose? Is there a chance that Avik might be completely stressed out, burnt out? Is there a very good chance that Avik might be acutely depressed? If so, we won't brush it under the carpet. No, we'll have to find out. But if there is no burning platform, let us look at what Avik is good at and then leverage that and then nurture that and then maximize that. So it's a strengths first approach focus more on strengths, focus more on the potential, and then how we take it forward. All right. So that's positive psychology. Again, reams of stuff there. There are summaries of it in the book. And then there are lots of readings and footnotes and bibliography for you to go through. I'm just giving you a flavor of it. So this particular construct or theory, if you will, theory and applications, of course, comes from the work of one specific psychologist and her associates. And she's Professor Barbara Fredericks. Okay, Professor Barbara Fredericks. What she's saying is go back to the resilience that we talked about, or the emotional intelligence, positivity. She's saying her construct, her model is called broaden and build. So she's saying everything depends on positive emotions. So how do we use positive emotions? What do we broaden and what do we build? Now, she's saying, look, there are two ways of building these positive emotions and resilience. You can get coaches, you can get consultants, you can get advisors, you can get psychologists, and they can do interventions. So just like you are doing hard skills training, like a programming training or a training on an HRMS or training on an ERP platform or a CRM database, right? You can do very, very in-depth training interventions and coaching and mentoring for multiple months with big teams. And you will still be able to move the needle, sure. But there is an alternative, innovative, more cost-effective, and very exciting way of arriving at the same conclusion, arriving at the same outcome. How? She's saying, let us broaden things which are positive. How? What kind of things? Joy, interest, contentment, love, bonding, camaraderie, teamwork. Yeah, you get the idea, you get the drift. How? Through employee policies, through employee engagement, through employee initiatives, through roadshows, through really reaching out and enhancing the employee experience, the colleague experience on the ground, through the employee value proposition. If you're able to do that, her research and analysis, and there are publications where Fredrickson's done this together with another academics associate called Losada, they have found that if you are doing this over a sustained period of time, you build the resilience, you build the fortitude, you build endurance and courage organically, naturally, almost as a byproduct. I'm focusing on positive emotions, but we are ending up building all of these things, which is a remarkable thing. Okay. And finally, coming up is the magic ratio. This kind of really blew me away the first time I read this. And so I wanted to share this with you guys. Is she saying not only are positive emotions important, the critical emotion is the number of times that you experience a positive emotion, the ratio of positive emotions to negative emotions experienced. And she's saying do a journal, end of the day, end of the week, end of the month, end of the quarter. If positive to negative emotions is less than 2.3:1, you are going to slowly go down, or fast, depending on that number, go down into boredom, apathy, dejection, frustration, etc. If it is between 2.3 and 3, it's a status quo, or it may be a state of stagnation, or it may be a state of languishing. But if it is more than 3, what does that mean? In a day, in a week, in a month, in a quarter, in a year, I'm 3 times more likely to experience a positive emotion than a negative emotion. Or the number of times that I experience a positive emotion typically is 3 times more than my incidence or frequency of a negative emotion. If that is the case, then you are on a self-perpetuating, sustaining way, a process that takes you to a journey of flourish, a journey of positivity. Because then you're not dependent on external factors. You're not dependent on the sense edge to feel, oh, great, it's gone up. My investments are doing good. You're not necessarily dependent on a whole lot of external factors and validation and approbation. You have it within yourself. to be happy within yourself. And also this has a positive beneficial effect in the workplace, right? So we're getting close to 4:15. I'm just keeping an eye, and that's pretty much it, guys. So I'm just going to stop sharing. And now as we get back, I'm going to just request Papia, maybe, to just, or Vinod, to unmute everyone and have a more free-flowing conversation.
Yes, we have unmuted them.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Great, great. So guys, we have a little bit of time and we don't have to go the entire 15 minutes, right? So I guess my first question to you would be, this has been a whirlwind. I've tried to cover a whole lot of things in like literally 60 minutes, 65 minutes. How did you find it? What's your feedback? Are there any takeaways? Was there anything where you thought, okay, that's interesting. I didn't know about that, or I didn't think about that in this way. Just want to know from you guys, your experience. Yeah, so guys, you can, I think you're unmuted, so you can talk. You can talk now. So I see some of you are using the chat box, but you can just talk. You can go on mute, okay? Okay. I can see somebody who said positive psychology. Anybody else, guys? Anybody else? And you can unmute. Are they still unmuted, Papia? Because nobody seems to be. Oh, you're on mute. You are on mute.
Yeah, they can enable that. We have, like, if they want, they can unmute and speak.
Okay, okay. While we are waiting, I'm just going to ask you, maybe Papia, you're there, Vinod is there, Nishani is there, and we've been talking about it. Is there any question that you have for me, or anything, or any feedback or anything?
No, definitely it was a very informative and inspiring presentation. So let's see what our, their guests are speaking. So we are waiting to hear from them.
Okay, I can see a lot on the chat box actually. So we have comments from Sunil Kumar, from Atera, from a lot of people. Kavyarasan. Okay, so there's one question that has come up, and let me try and just 1 second. Huh? Just bring it up. Yeah, so this is from Sunil Kumar, and I'll just read it out for everyone's benefit. Not everybody is good at maths, or in other words, good at IQ or EQ, because they may not have the talent, they may not have the interest, or they may not have the inclination. Then why are we still forcing people to learn maths and learn science and say, okay, you have to be whatever, have to try and go into IIT, etc.? It's a very interesting question. Very good question. And you're saying, what can be done about it, and what can the government do about it? I'll tell you something, guys. This is something that I found. So let's first talk about, because your specific thing is around the government. So let me try and address that. The government, if you're looking at the National Education Policy, which was published in 2020, guys, you will see that they're going beyond STEM. Yeah, nobody's saying that if you don't like maths, you don't have to do maths. Agreed. So they're saying it's STEM, you have to do science, technology, engineering, maths, but have a more comprehensive, multidisciplinary education. And they're calling it MERU, MERU. This is an acronym for that. And there is a lot of focus, and guys, you would be knowing this because there are lots of sessions at the IITs and the IIMs that are being conducted around the behavioral sciences, or around the humanities, or around philosophy. I mean, I have myself come across many YouTube talks by Sri M, for example, where he's going into the Vedas or the Upanishads, the Mahabharata. And this is for IITIMs, right? So definitely there is a scope. I'll just give you one little experience that I had, a little interesting experience. There's something called the Indian knowledge system that the IITs have these days. And as part of that, IIT Guwahati had called me for a series of workshops and lectures. This was back in November, December last year. Okay. And obviously, I talked a little bit about, ancient Indian sciences and how many of the things that we can see in the Upanishad have a lot of analytical things in them, have a lot of problem-solving things in them, have a lot of things that have to do with physics, right? In its essence. And I was talking about all this. Great. At the end, they said, okay, one of our students will come and thank you. And they said, okay, that person can give the entire thanks in Sanskrit. I'm just giving an example. So this was IIT, right? And I was thinking of being asked questions in code, that in mathematical terms, that I'll have to deconstruct and make it into language. And here was someone thanking me in Sanskrit. I mean, it does not have to be Sanskrit, it could be something else. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm beginning to see beyond STEM. And in fact, in our previous book, this is also something that we wrote about, that we need emotional intelligence. We have to go beyond STEM. So, why would an IIT person who's, BTech and then MTech, and then going into the corporate world, not know about behavioral science? It is important for you guys to know about behavioral science. Why should you not know about organizational psychology, about people management? Sooner or later, you will be doing that. Maybe you're already doing that. So a traditional program, there is always the scope and the opportunity now to go beyond STA. Yeah.
Hi, Avik.
Hey,
Thanks for your response. I'm Sunil speaking, actually. Yeah, this is a question. It is posing in my mind. Okay. So what I like to know that, not everybody is talented, the society, or not everybody is good at maths. Not everybody is good in coding. But what I see in the present trend, as you already shown, right? There are a decline in these kind of roles and increase in these kind of roles. No, the society should be balanced. What I mean, at one point, there will be death of people, see, many people will be unemployed because everybody is not talented by birth or anything, right?
Yeah.
So they should have interest also. Of course, data science is a very complex, AI and ML is very complex things. That is good to understand. But is it really necessary for the society?
It's not for everyone, right? Not everyone can do it. Not everyone can master it. It is impossible for everyone to master it. Let's be blunt.
In the same time, if you look at the other coin, see, the people with these skills only are highly paid. Yeah. So, but the people with, as you told, that Sanskrit, for example, why Sanskrit is not, why it is underestimated? Why not they are paid and pair with AI and ML? Why not with people with other skills are paid? So it should be a balance, That's very important for the society. Otherwise, in the long run, I strongly believe that there is a catastrophe. Yeah. This is just my opinion.
You can, I mean, if you have skills which are paid like millions of dollars and you have other skills, so let's say somebody who's teaching a language, it can be English or Bengali or Sanskrit or Tamil in a school, and that person is getting paid, but nothing close to this, even though this person is also educated. Yeah, so obviously there'll be a wider range. I want to come back to your first question, which I think is even more important, Sunil. I want to give an example, because this is something that we have recommended or proposed in the book, that this is something that we can do. I'll give you an example. Let us say there is a person who is not an IIT grad. Okay. There is a person who is just a normal commerce person, or a BCom or a BSc or a BA graduate. That person does not have a huge amount of IQ, but that person has a lot of positive things in life. I'll give you an example. So you'll say, not everyone is talented. I'll disagree with you slightly. Maybe this person is talented in that he or she has a good deal of patience, has a lot of feeling for humanity, feeling for society, wants to do things for community. That is this person's talent. Now, what the company should do is say, okay, X percentage of my operating profit, I have to give to CSR. So instead of coming to I'm just giving an example, right? A Sunil Kumar, who is a high-tech person, who's great in technology, who is a great technical architect, but may not be this role. Let me not go to Sunil. Let me not go to Avik, who's a Delhi school grad and has done 20 years with PricewaterhouseCoopers and Deloitte and has been an external consultant on World Bank projects and is now an author. I won't go to him. I will go to that person. I will find out that person. I will recruit that person whose real talent is doing good for others. Okay. Think about it. Okay, that person is still not going to be paid as highly as useful. I understand. But at least I'm giving an opportunity. I'm giving a solution of how this person can be employed in the industry. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else? I see some more chat messages. We have 5 minutes. Anybody else? Atira, Vanam, Ravi, anybody else?
Sir, this is Karuna here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it says Praveen on the screen. Are you Praveen or are you Karuna? Are you both?
Okay, I think it's going on both. This is Karuna here.
Yeah,
I have one simple question. Probably maybe I missed in your presentation. The main focus here is on the work, worker, and workplace.
Yes.
As you mentioned at the beginning, now there is no more work or workplace constrained to a particular place. Now it's all like global. As we all working on different time zones and working with different global partners or customers. So particularly when we come to the IQ and EQ, two aspects which touched upon, it's becoming more and more challenging, right? Emotional things locally in India is different, in the northern or western countries are different, and similarly for the IQ as well. So it becomes a little more important when we work on a particular project or a team with these two essential skills differing in a lot. So how do you see that going forward as an individual to look at it?
Great question, Karuna. So what we have suggested in our book is a way that you can home in or funnel in on the individual skills, that the behavioral skills or the interpersonal skills or the human-centric skills that you may want to develop. I'm not going into the details of that, but essentially we have given a very simple framework or method of doing that, which has to do with looking at the market, looking at your domain, looking at what you want to do, and superimposing that with that cluster of skills. So an intersection point that we have discussed in great detail in the book can show you additional skills. Let's take an example, right? Let us assume that you are a high-performing manager or senior manager, and in your team, you have a lot of people who are highly qualified. Those qualified people are mainly data scientists or big data experts or AI guys or programmers, right? Let's assume. Now, what you are seeing as you're going up the ladder is, okay, whatever I'm being asked by my team from a technical standpoint, I can help them. I can review, I can instruct, and I can solve their problems. When I come to interpersonal problems, human-centric problems, that is where I may be struggling a little bit because my education is not that. I've not been equipped and I've not handled such a big team. Now I'm promoted, I'm handling a big team. I'm just making up things on the fly, right? I'm just giving a story. And you come to the realization, okay, I need to develop more around human-centric skills. What kind of skills? Are you talking about mindfulness? Are you talking about empathy? Are you talking about things that can be done through a long period of time through meditation? Or are you talking about other human-centric skills, such as persuasion skills, negotiation skills, conflict management skills? Depending on your situation and depending on what you are likely to face in the next year, you can choose from these 15, 20, 30 skills and say, this is my immediate need. I need to be a better resolver or mediator of conflict and disputes. Could be your answer. and then you win on that skill. Does that begin to make sense, Gaurav?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. And guys, please call me Avik.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Praveen, you are on the screen for a millisecond. Did you have a question? Praveen still there? Okay. All right. I think we are good. We have just 1 or 2 minutes left. So, Papia, would you or Nishani just like to just come in and maybe conclude this?
Yeah, so like just, I think, is there any questions anymore? Like we have 1 more minute.
That's fine.
I don't think
just
so.
want to say, hi, Papia. No, just want to say it was a very, very insightful session, and got to know a great deal about the emerging trends in workplace and what we can see for ourselves as the future, and also about IQ, EQ, and all these concepts, right? So very, very insightful, and thank you to Avik for taking his time today and giving this knowledge to us. Yeah.
So thank you, Sulakshmi, and thank you for being such an engaged member of the audience. I if I'm not mistaken, you have had at least 5 or 6 things on the chat box in the last 70 minutes. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you to all the participants for their time and interest. And thank you, Mr. Avik, for all the, for your informative and inspiring presentations. Your speech was very engaging and thought-provoking.
Thank you.
So I'm sure, all the participants are enjoyed it and they have a long-lasting impressions on their life skills and everything. And I just want to tell everyone that we'll share the presentation later.
Yes.
Also, if you have any questions in your mind, please write to us. We'll connect you with Mr. Avik.
Yes, absolutely. So in case you want to have conversations.
Yeah, Avik, Nishani, if you want, you can put your email address on the chat box just in case anyone wants to get in touch with you or do a similar session for their companies and so on and so forth.
Sure, I'm just going to put it on the chat box. And what I would say is, hopefully, guys, you enjoyed this session. And I know a lot of you who had registered could not join, but this is being recorded, so you can see it later. If you want to connect with me, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so please feel free to do so. Alternatively, if you have specific questions, and this often happens, you go through the slides and later on, I wanted to ask this question. Just compile the questions, send them to Papia, and she will send them to me.
Sure. We'll do that.
Avik, I hope you enjoyed this session as much as the audience did.
I really enjoyed this session. Thank you so much for organizing this, Nishani, Papia, Vinod. I know Rakesh couldn't join today. A big thanks to all of you. And let's see, maybe this is the start of more conversations.
Yes, definitely. We look forward to being in touch with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.